In anticipation, perhaps fear of Western support for Ukraine's much-anticipated spring offensive, Russia has spent the past few weeks throwing wave after wave of attacks against a heroic and determined Ukrainian frontline. Progress has been limited, and despite 7 months of intense fighting, cities like Bakhmut have not fallen. Now, Russia appears closer to culminating. The tempo of attacks has fallen by over 80%. The Wagner Group of mercenaries is still making painfully slow progress in the north of Bakhmut, but the Russian army is struggling to replace losses and is running short of ammunition and ideas. Momentum has been lost, and the Russian military desperately needs an operational pause. Reports also suggest that many Russian military forces are redeploying, leaving the mercenaries to their fate in Bakhmut. If true, Russia recognizes that its attention must now shift from offense to defense in preparation for the anticipated Ukraine counteroffensive. The EU has urged Belarus not to host Russian nuclear weapons, saying it could face further sanctions if it does. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell tweeted, "Belarus hosting Russian nuclear weapons would mean an irresponsible escalation and threat to European security. Belarus can still stop it, it is their choice." The EU stands ready to respond with further sanctions. It comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced on Saturday that Moscow plans to station tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. 10 aircraft capable of carrying the armaments, which are designed for use on the battlefield, rather than to wipe out cities, have reportedly already been moved there. In Russia, an explosion that injured 3 people and created a crater in the center of the town of Kiryevsk in Russia's Tula region was caused by a drone, the TASS news agency quoted law enforcement as saying. 3 residential buildings were also damaged following the explosion in Kiryevsk, which is around 140 miles south of Moscow, a regional security agency said. The cause of the explosion in the Tula region was a tactical reconnaissance unmanned aerial vehicle. In his nightly video address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said it is Russia's full-scale defeat that will be a reliable guarantee against new aggressions and crises. Ukraine's president added the Kremlin is losing in its efforts to spiritually enslave our people. He also said that in cooperation with the International Criminal Court, the Ukrainian justice system is doing everything to ensure that Russian war criminals are held accountable. Moscow has launched a new campaign to try and tempt new recruits into the ranks of their armed forces. Adverts promise cash bonuses and other benefits. Recruiters are making cold calls to eligible men, and enlistment offices are working with universities and social service agencies to lure students and the unemployed. As fighting grinds on in Ukrainian, the Kremlin's war machine badly needs new recruits, but denies a new call-up is planned. The last round of call-ups, bringing in 300,000 reservists, sent panic through the country in September since most men under 65 are formally part of the reserve. Tens of thousands fled Russia rather than report to recruiting stations. Russian media report that men across the country are receiving summonses from enlistment offices. In most of those cases, men were simply asked to update their records. In others, they were ordered to take part in military training. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said last week that serving summonses to update records in enlistment offices is usual practice and a continued undertaking. Russia plans to have infrastructure available to base submarines that will carry Poseidon nuclear-capable super torpedoes in the Pacific Ocean by early 2024. Moscow said in January that it had produced the first set of the Poseidon torpedoes, for years after Vladimir Putin announced the new type of strategic nuclear weapon, confirming it would have its own power supply. There are few confirmed details about the Poseidon in the public domain, but it is essentially a cross between a torpedo and a drone which can be launched from a nuclear submarine. The torpedoes are being developed for deployment on the Belgorod and Khabarovsk nuclear submarines, TASS reported. Work on the construction of coastal infrastructure facilities for basing 2 special submarines in Kamchatka is planned to be completed early next year, an unidentified defense source was cited as saying. Russia Pacific Fleet's ballistic nuclear missile submarine base is located on the southeastern coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, in the Russian Far East. The Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Okhotsk make up the Kamchatka Peninsula's eastern and western coastlines. The source allegedly told TASS that a new division is being formed as part of the submarine forces of the Pacific Fleet, which will include not only Belgorod and Khabarovsk, but also other submarines. The new special-purpose submarines will participate in solving the tasks of strategic deterrence, the source reportedly said. Meanwhile, in Black Sea, a number of uncrewed surface vessels attempted to strike the Russian naval base of Sevastopol in occupied Crimea last week. One USV was stopped by defensive booms, while two were destroyed in the harbor. Russian officials said that no Russian vessels had been damaged. A previous USV attack on Sevastopol on October 29, 2022 reportedly damaged the minesweeper Ivan Golubec and the frigate Admiral Makarov. Even though the new attacks likely failed to damage any military assets, the USV threat likely continues to constrain operations of Russia's Black Sea Fleet.